Hello, my name is Rob Garner. I'm a computer programming instructor, and today I'm going to demonstrate how to use properties in C Sharp. So I'm going to open up a student class demo which we created before. And in the student class demo we had the following class. We had some private fields defined, some constructors. We chained these constructors so that they all pulled off. In this case, it's now pulling off of this middle one, this 4-parameter constructor, and we have a 7-parameter constructor that calls the 4-parameter constructor and then initializes these scores and calls this calc average method. The calc average method figures out the average score. We also use accessor and mutator methods in order to provide the capability to modify our fields. Our accessors were preceded by the word get, and our mutator methods by the word set. The accessor methods just returned the field that they're associated with. The mutator took one parameter and set that parameter into the field that they're associated with. In order to test this class, what we've done is created a couple students using that class. So we have 2 students created here. They have different majors, and we're going to right line the student majors here. So if I run this as is, we can see that majors set using the set methods, and both of them display correctly. So the next thing I want to do is change this class so that it uses properties. So instead of get major, what we're going to do is create a public property called major, and typically we will for identifiers for properties we will use the capitalized version of the field. And we're going to create a get property which is just going to return major, and a set which will just set major equal to value. And this property will replace the get major accessor, and down below will also replace the set major mutator. We'll continue on, and I'm going to take care of the names first because they're kind of the same. And again, we're going to make our property public, set it to a string, call it get first, just call it first name, create a get for it, which will return student first name and create a set that will do, which will set student first name equal to value. The value keyword, basically whatever gets assigned into this property will come in through value, and then that's how we can use it programmatically. So that took care of the first name, and I'll get rid of my mutator down below. Notice that when I put the parentheses up here, it didn't recognize that this is a property. You don't have a parameter list for a property. So now that I've got some of the more trivial properties defined, the next thing I'm going to work with is the scores. And we can see that we actually only had an accessor for average, and that made sense because average is calculated off of the average. So we're just going to have a public double average property. And we're just going to have a get. So far this looks okay. We have the ability to get and set first names, last names, student numbers, and then we have these scores. and we have a calculate method that but we need to call this calculate method, and typically the place we do that is in the set. So we'll set a score 1 equal to value, and then we will calc average. And what that does is every time someone changes a score, it'll recalculate the average to make sure it's correct. And we're going to use this for all of these. And this will ensure the average always stays up to date. So when we initialize our scores, we'll calculate the average, and then down here the average will be calculated. So typically if you have a calculation function inside of a class, you want to do it off the set. If you do it off the get, it can work, but then if you make any changes to this class and you don't realize that the average has changed and you rely on average to be correct at all times, it will create some problems. And we notice we have some errors. Well, the reason why we have some errors right now when I built is because program.cs, we no longer have set and get major. So now that we've redefined our class using properties, we need to change how we use those properties. And we see that with set major, we passed it a parameter. Well, the neat thing about properties is that we're going to be able to use the assignment operator. So if I take the property called major, and this property major corresponds to this property defined here, which has a get and a set. All I need to do to assign it is just use the assignment operator. And the way this works is this new value gets assigned to the property major. C# will then go and call the set method for major, and so the field lowercase major will then be assigned the value, and then that will go up into our fields, which will reside there. And then if we return major, that will occur over here, which is what we do at this point. We say my student dot major, and that will actually return. So now it's behaving very much, this property behaves very much more like a normal variable, but we have the ability to put code to validate things. So we'll change this. So now my other student is going to use a property, and down here as well. And so now our main method is using properties to access the attributes of the student. And if we run that, we can see that it still works. So the next thing to look at is, can we, and the nice thing about this is if we scroll down, we can see we've reduced the size of our class quite a bit by using properties, but can we make it even more succinct? And the answer is yes. So if we look at major, first name, last name, those properties, they don't have a calculation in them, and so there's no need really to, they're rather trivial. What you can do is you can actually replace the get and sets by a shortcut annotation like that. And because that's kind of the default thing that we do with gets and sets, Visual Studio assumes that if you don't define a get or set, that's what you meant. And by doing this, we actually considerably reduce the complexity of these properties. Now, the one problem with this is that this will no longer be associated with major, first name, last name, and student number. And so we don't really need these fields anymore. So I'll delete those fields. And if we want to reference them, they're actually just referenced off of the properties. And so when I initialize student number, I'm going to use the property student number. And when I want to initialize student first name, I'll initialize it with the property student first name. Same thing with last name and major. So when we construct these students, now we're just referencing the property name, which doesn't have a field anymore. Instead, it just has these properties which it references. And these properties do have a field behind them. It's just that they're anonymous and they don't have a identifier you can access directly. So that's why we had to change that to a field name. I mean a property name. And you can actually, conventionally we often define these properties in a little bit more succinct manner. Usually along these lines. So if the property is trivial, in other words, it has a normal get and set functionality, you don't need to define a field name, and you can treat the property just as you would a variable. And when you initialize it, you just initialize directly into that property, or use it within the class by using the property name rather than the field name. When it's more complexity involved, we want to define a field, for example, with the scores, and then often there's some validation code or some calculation code inside of this function. And for example, you could put some validation that checks to see if the score is between 0 and 100. We won't do that here, so we don't make this too complex. But that's what you can do. Also, with average, we could actually change this as well. Rather than just having a get, we can use an auto property for average. And typically what we do with this is we have a get, and then we declare a private set. We can't just have a get with an auto property, because since the underlying field is anonymous, we would have no way of setting average. But by doing it this way, we can get rid of yet another field, and of course we then have to change the field name to the property name up here. And what that will do, by making this a private set, you can't change average outside of the class, but within the class we can access it. So this is often how we will handle a relatively simple property, but that should be read-only. And if I run that, I can see that it still worked. We can even set some scores. and we can display those scores. And so it makes for some nice succinct code. It's easy to read. The properties do the same thing as accessor mutator methods. In some languages just use accessor mutator methods, but in C# that was provided to make things a little bit easier to code. It says 0 because I didn't change it to my other students. The dangers of cut and paste. And looks like my calculation's off. Parentheses are important. That looks better. So we can see that the averages were calculated properly. We would of course want to create test cases and validate them using a calculator or Excel spreadsheet. And we've successfully replaced our accessor and mutator methods with properties, which has allowed us to make our code perhaps a little bit more succinct. And that completes my demonstration of using properties in C#. Thank you.